Privileged.
Presented by Stillafrog.
She'd just purchased a new dress from JCPenney's, shoes to match, and the cutest little necklace. This was their first major event as a couple. Their party circuit debut, you could say, inasmuch as they had any sort of party circuit or social circle or really any collective nightlife of which to speak, as they were only a little over 2 months into dating. But it was exciting nevertheless, in that break out into a very unflattering cold sweat kind of way. He worked for some prestigious investment firm, and they were attending the company's annual gala. Now there's a word she never thought she'd be a part of, growing up as she did in the rough section of town, such that made the nearby blue-collar neighborhoods seem like a page out of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Gala had a decidedly Cinderella-esque sort of feel to it. She just prayed she wasn't squashed by a giant pumpkin come midnight. They'd met at a convenience store. She was a few items too heavy for her charge card and was mortified. He, in chivalrous white knight of the checkout line fashion, swooped in and paid for the Diet Coke and tampons she would have otherwise had to put back. That wasn't embarrassing at all. But he just smiled and laughed as he helped her carry her bags to her car. She asked for his number so that she could repay him. He happily gave it to her. How do you start a relationship with a guy who had to bail you out of a Playtex emergency at a 7-Eleven? Now there was one to tell the kids about someday. But thinking back on the episode, his easy and gallant demeanor, there was something about it that made her grin and blush, so she called, on her way home. He picked up immediately and said, "Got the money already?" She giggled. From then on, it was a love story blessed from the 10 items or less line beginnings. She made no pretense about the fact that they came from 2 different worlds. 2 very different worlds. As in, forget Mars and Venus. More like if he was from Mars and she was from an exoplanet orbiting a totally different universe. But it wasn't about caviar versus Doritos or Armani versus Old Navy. It was about 2 people from diverse backgrounds who managed to shed the clothes of their respective upbringings when they were together, both figuratively and literally. And just laugh and talk about anything and everything. And then, of course, the sex, well, again, she just grinned and blushed. Now, the gala beckoned. He seemed a bit on edge, debonair in his tux and tie, his dark hair gorgeously tousled despite efforts to tame it. "Do you like?" she twirled. "You look stunning in it," he quietly observed. "Where'd you get it?" "The mall, JCPenney's," she offered. He kissed her and then, standing back, admiringly said, "JCPenney should pay you for what you do to that dress." The gushing sentimentality flowed in abundance all the way there, until they walked into the place. She could see this instantaneous change in him. She didn't know what it was, but what she did know was that she'd never been in a room like this before. The fanciest venue she'd seen was about 10 years ago for her grandparents' 50th. That was held at the banquet center attached to the Country Inn and Suites. But this? Opulent wasn't the word she was looking for, more like Xanadu, some sort of fantastical kingly palace adorned in gold, crystals, rich woods, and billowy fabrics. She suddenly felt as though the flashing neon price tag was hanging out of the back of her off-the-rack mall store dress. She realized why he seemed nervous. She didn't fit. Despite his assurances to the contrary, she just didn't fit. They'd been seated with some of his colleagues. He introduced her around the table, somewhat stiffly. She couldn't help but intuit. And then just as stiffly, he veered from their assigned seats to where, he hurriedly informed, his boss was sitting, leaving her to fend for herself, like she was wearing a red dress to a wake. Where the hell was her fairy godmother now? The other women at the table smiled, and it was not at all in that, "Who the hell does this girl think she is, mingling with us in her obvious Payless brand shoes" kind of way. It was anything but that. And yet she was acutely self-conscious. She was back in that convenience store line, red-faced because the pubescent cashier had practically barked out, "Your card was declined, insufficient funds." Right there, she should have abandoned her merchandise and run. But no, she thought it a great idea to set herself up for this excruciating situation. She desperately needed a drink. The main event was an award presentation to honor Carter Prentice Worthington, esteemed board member and founding partner. Carter Prentice Worthington. Yep, that sounded about right. Thank God the whole ceremony thing was later. Even better, there was only one other person at the bar. A distinguished-looking man, elegantly dressed and accessorized as these people always were, clearly one of them. "I'll have a white wine, please," she said quietly. "We're featuring a regional Gewürztraminer," the bartender responded, clearly sensing somehow that she wasn't right for the part. "What?" she asked helplessly. "It's good," the man sitting at the bar chimed in. He smiled at her. "I promise you'll like it." "Sure, then I'll just have that," she surrendered. "Something tells me you're not enjoying yourself so far." He was older, probably about her dad's age, but he wore it youngly. The soft lines around his eyes and chin made him seem at once friendly and kind. "Let's just say this is all very new to me," she confessed, now worried that he'd spotted her out-of-place faux leather pumps or the absence of a $2,000 Alexander McQueen clutch. "These things are just dog and pony shows," he said, and she could tell that he was making fun of them with an obvious degree of fondness. "They're not real. It all comes down to who makes it look the best at the end of the evening." He ordered another scotch, to which the bartender diligently jumped, versus, of course, his far more cavalier attendance to her drink request. "Feeling self-conscious in a place like this is normal. In fact, if you weren't, then I'd think you were hiding something," her new barmate continued. "Like most of them," he nodded toward the rest of the room. "See her over there?" He pointed to a tall woman wearing what had to be the most ornately designed gown she'd ever seen. Her plastic surgeon botched one of her new tits, and now, well, they don't quite make a perfect pair, he smiled knowingly. She tried unsuccessfully to stifle a laugh. "And him?" he said, indicating a middle-aged gentleman sitting sternly in the corner. "He's busy watching his wife flirt unabashedly with the guy she's sleeping with, his soon-to-be ex-golf fourth. And that guy? That guy is deliberating whether or not tonight is the night he'll finally tell his fiancée he prefers her brother. Most of these folks are here to put on a show. They dress the part, and for a couple of hours, they dream they have it all, at least until they return to their everyday screwed-up lives." She liked the guy. Definitely the antithesis of what she'd expected when she first sat down. And amazingly, she was beginning to feel a little better about the evening. Not quite good, mind you, just somewhat better. "Thank you," she said. "I needed to laugh." "Even the man of the hour, Mr. Carter Prentice Worthington himself? I'm sure he's got his own closet full of botched boobs and cheating wives," he grinned. She giggled and ordered another, however you pronounce that wine. The alcohol was also definitely helping to soothe the roiling swarm of butterflies in her stomach. "Carter Prentice Worthington," she mused. "It's too perfect. I betcha his real name is like Bob Kowalski or something," she joked. "You know, you're probably right." They clinked glasses. He proposed a toast. "To meeting real people in, well, unreal places. I guess I'd better go and take my seat. It truly has been nice talking to you. Keep your chin up, okay? I think you're already doing wonderfully, and I think you'll go far," he offered with an encouraging wink. "I didn't get your name." "Bob Kowalski," he smirked. "It's been my pleasure." "Of course," she laughed to herself. "Hey, I've been looking all over for you," her boyfriend said, somewhat out of breath. "I've been right here." "Look," she began, emboldened by 3 glasses of wine and the wisdom of a stranger. "I'm probably not going to ever wear the perfect dress. I am the girl who sometimes doesn't have enough on her charge card, or who has to put an extra sweatshirt on in the winter because she's trying to cut down on her heating bill, or who saves up her spare change in a jar so that she can splurge once in a while and treat herself to a manicure. And I'm good with that. But if you're not..." "I'm sorry. I know I was a little tense earlier. It's just that these work functions can get so..." He paused and looked at her. "I love you," he uttered for the first time. "I really do. I want to be with you. Just you. I'm terribly sorry if I made you feel anything other than that." He took her hand as Carter Prentice Worthington walked up to the podium to speak. Before beginning, however, the night's honoree looked directly at her and, with a smile, blew a kiss. "Wait, was he... How do you—" her boyfriend began. "Oh, Bob and I? We go way back," she laughed.